Hey all, Jeremy here from mensgaming.net, and I'm bringing you a video today about how to keep things fresh in Warhammer 40,000. We all know how expansive and broad the 40k scene is. There's so many different moving parts and elements to the overall hobby. And I guess this video is not only kind of a way in which, to discuss how one does keep things fresh, but it's also a bit of a personal kind of blog for me where I'm going to discuss how I'm planning to keep things fresh in the 2018 season and what my plans are and what the limitations I've set for myself are as far as army building and hobby and all those things go. So just to set a little bit of context for why I'm doing this video, I'm doing this video because I feel like, and why I'm doing this whole kind of hobby focus for 2018, is I feel like I've been too extreme in the hobby as far as the last couple of seasons, ITC seasons have gone. I've had a very competitive focus as far as 40k goes, and I've almost played the game purely for results. And people that know me or have seen me play have noticed that at times my armies have looked less than wonderful. While I might have parts of the army that are really well painted or commissioned jobs, other parts of the army will just be kind of second-hand lots that I bought from eBay or from from Facebook, and then I haven't even bothered to strip them or repaint them. I've just run with the paint job that was probably painted by someone when they were 10 or 11 years old. So I've been running very haphazard armies that are not fabulous on the eye. However, I have achieved some pretty good competitive results. And after going back to back at CanCon, a couple of my friends approached me and said, "Hey Jeremy, have you had enough yet? You probably should lay off a bit and just chill." And those words kind of resonated with me a little bit, because I kind of thought, I thought to myself and wondered, well, what would my new competitive goal be for 2018? Sure, I could try to win CanCon again. I could try to have really strong competitive results, but I feel that would be at the detriment of my overall enjoyment. And I think that's something and it's kind of what has provoked me to make this video. I feel that some people in life in general, they just focus on one thing for too long, and then they turn something that they love into what is effectively a job. Even if it's not something they get paid for, it could be a hobby, it could be a relationship, it could be friendships. They'll go so extreme into it that it no longer is enjoyable and no longer is it pleasurable or just fun to hang out with these people or do these tasks or whatever we're talking about. So I think it's really important in life to keep things fresh. And I guess so, as far as 40k goes, people have lots of different focuses when it comes to the Warhammer hobby. Some people I've met, that I tell them when I play Warhammer, they are really familiar with the lore of 40k because they've played the Dawn of War games. Or some people, their only engagement with Warhammer 40k is to read the kind of Black Library books, whether it's the Horus Heresy or the more recent kind of 40k set narratives. Some people just love the books and their only engagement with the hobby is to read the narratives. Other people, they're just painters. Some people will just paint miniatures and they have no actual desire or no goals to ever play the game. Other people, obviously like myself and a lot of people that will be watching this video that are more competitively centric, will play primarily or engage with 40k primarily for the tabletop game. And as a result, their focus will be on, chasing the dragon, which is a term that's used to kind of always be on top of the meta, always have a really strong army, always be 2 or 3 or 5 steps ahead of their friends, making sure that they've got the strongest list in the local gaming group or on the tournament scene. So I've definitely fit into that latter category for the last couple of years, and I feel fatigued. And I experienced a big kind of break from the game when 8th first came out. As many of you will know, the podcast I used to do with Sean just dropped off. We stopped doing State of the Meta. I stopped going to tournaments, and for pretty much half of 2018, I wasn't really playing 40k at all. So I kind of made a comeback towards the end of the year with an invigorated sense of passion. But that passion is now diverted into what initially drew me to the hobby. And it certainly wasn't the game. When I was a kid and I walked into a Games Workshop store, it wasn't the dice rolling or the actual intricacies of tactical play that excited me, because I was too young to understand it. It was just the world and the look, the aesthetic and the feeling you get when you're a part of such a vibrant community. And that's something that I'd like to return to. So I've kind of got a list here of some of my season goals. And of course, keeping keeping things fresh within the hobby is really important, and pivoting to a new emphasis. So in the past, as I said, my emphasis was on the kind of the game. So now I'm going to move towards the painting and modeling side of 40K. And for some people, I think they could almost do the opposite. People have approached me recently and said, you know, Jeremy, how do I improve at 40K? I'm struggling. I have mediocre results or whatever. And I think the emphasis that you have and the goals you set yourself are a really important part of achieving success. A lot of people, and I think this is something, as I said, it's not emphasized enough within general life, how important setting yourself goals is to your level of success. If you don't set goals, you know, you're way less likely to achieve those particular kind of outcomes than if you set them as goals. So if you'd like to be really competitive and really win games, maybe set a goal for yourself. You know, in 2018, I want to win a tournament. A lot of people will go to tournament play and kind of be happy with like a top 10 finish. If there's say 30 or 40 people in the tournament, top 10 is a success. That's fine, and that's a really good result when you think about it. But if you kind of say, you know what, I'm going to recalibrate my competitive goals. Now I want to podium in the next event I play. Like by doing that and setting those goals, it's going to mean you're going to be putting more emphasis on the things that are required to win games of 40K, like tactical decision making, intricate list building, play testing, putting lists up on forums, all the kind of things you need to do to really kind of hone a list and become strong with it. For me, it's the other side of things. I need to be less focused on that and more focused on painting and modeling. So for me, that's going to be, as you kind of see at the bottom of the document, I'm going to return to my Grey Knights, and my kind of do-it-yourself Space Marine chapter that I started kind of my return to Warhammer with 4 or 5 years ago. And that was a passion for me when I first came back. And that's something I'm going to return to because I feel like I've neglected that part of my hobby, and it's a really passionate army that I've really enjoyed painting and modeling. But what's really important as well is I feel like when you recalibrate your goals, it's really important to maintain the you know, part of the, you know, string or a strand of your previous focus. If you just kind of do a full 180, there's no guarantee that total 180 will result in you enjoying it at all either. You need to kind of balance. So I feel for me, it's really important. I know myself well enough to know that I'm going to need to maintain a competitive goal in order to stay interested in Warhammer. I can't play a game of Warhammer with no desire about winning at all. But so therefore, it's important for me to maintain a little bit of that within my kind of 2018 season goals. So as I've said, I'm going to Grey Knights. The question is, why am I going to Grey Knights? Why haven't? Because my Knights of the Golden Chalice are a kind of they're a dark red Space Marine chapter that have motifs from lots of different current kind of themes. There's a lot of blood drop motifs. There's a lot of like the Templar cross motif within the paint scheme as well. But then I've also used a lot of chaos bits within my models. And the reason why I've done that is the fluff for the Knights of the Golden Chalice is that they are a kind of very secretive Blood Angel successor chapter that obviously have the Black Rage like any other, the Red Thirst like any, what's the Black Rage? They succumb to the Black Rage like any Blood Angel does, but their chief librarian in their chapter has actually, like what Magnus did, he made a pact with Tzeentch where he doesn't really know exactly what he's doing, but he's accessed these very dark forces. And he's made a pact with Tzeentch, and Tzeentch has kind of made it so that the Black Rage doesn't affect this chapter anymore. Instead, when they start to succumb to the Black Rage, they take part in a ritual, and that ritual kind of, they almost become like Rubric Marines after the ritual. They become very kind of like shadows of who they were before, and then they're kept separate from the rest of the chapter. So within the fluff for my Knights of the Golden Chalice is like a separate sect within the chapter that are called the Curavimus, which in Latin means the cured, and they are this kind of very Tzeentchian sect. They're very strong psychers, and that's where I've always represented my Grey Knights from. So whenever I play Grey Knights, it's been that they're the members of the Curavimus of the chapter. So I want to refocus on that chapter, and I'm going to focus specifically on the Grey Knights element of it for my 2018 goals. And the reason is pretty much because Grey Knights are a non-competitive army as far as I'm concerned in 8th. So by focusing on something that's a non-top tier, non-competitive army, it's kind of forcing me to stop trying to chase the dragon and stop trying to win every event I play, because it's simply not going to be possible to do so with Grey Knights. So it's going to be, I'm going to have to, and it's going to be a difficult process for me. And I guess that's part of the reason why I'm making this video, is that, you know, readjusting that focus is going to involve me being comfortable with more, you know, middle tier finishes. And that's something I'm going to be happy with, because when I'm going to go to tournaments this year, I'm going to be very focused on that painting and hobby score. I'm going to be trying really hard to make sure that in, you know, peer comp events, I get a good comp score. I'm going to be making sure that, you know, I touch up any old models I use, I'm going to touch up. And I've got some really kind of exciting hobby projects planned for some new Strike Marines. I've got to do quite a few Strike Marines, and I'm going to kit bash like a bunch of different kits. But having said that, I always, whenever I'm going to kind of go into a project like this, I want to try my best to make those Grey Knights competitive. I don't want to just, you know, get totally stomped every game I play. So I thought I'd quickly outline some of the things that have first came to me when I've kind of opened up the Grey Knights Codex and had a look and thought, well, you know, what do I have to work with here? A lot of people have discounted Grey Knights. I know a lot of Grey Knight players that have just abandoned them in 8th edition. Maybe they were slightly excited originally because Grey Knights were one of the first codexes released, but by now their power creep has totally made them almost irrelevant in terms of the metagame. But they're not terrible. Like, I think there's things to work with Grey Knights. So I've got a little list down there you can see. So I've got the pros that I think that have drawn my attention to Grey Knights that I want to emphasize and focus on within my list. The first one is the first to the fray Warlord trait. And that's a Warlord trait that Grey Knights get that is a 6-inch bubble from the Warlord of reroll charge ranges for all friendly Grey Knights. Now that's pretty sick. Like, as far as Warlord traits go, that is one of the best Warlord traits, I think, almost in the game. Why do I say that? Well, firstly, reroll charge range is not something that everyone has access to. Some armies just don't get access to that type of ability. And other armies have to take kind of suboptimal choices, or they have to pivot themselves or kind of twist their arm as far as list building goes to get that. An example is with Blood Angels. Blood Angels, if they want that level of efficacy with their charges, of course, beyond the Descent of Angels stratagem, which only applies to a unit that's arrived from reserves, they have to take Lamades and Death Company, because Lamades gives Death Company reroll charges. And some people that are playing Blood Angels might not think that Death Company are the best assault troop. I personally think that you know, the Vanguard Veterans and Sanguinary Guard have their benefits over Death Company, but people will, and I think people should when they play Blood Angels, focus on Death Company because of that ability to reroll their charge range with Lamades. So the fact that Grey Knights just get that as a Warlord trait, and you know, you can give that to whoever and get this bubble of reroll charges is pretty amazing. So, because it pretty much doubles almost doubles your success chance. I don't have the numbers at hand, but I think it's something like you go from about a 35% chance or 33% chance to make the charge up to high 50s. So I think 50 goes up to about 57% chance. So as you can see, if you're charging with 6, 7, 8 different units, that's going to totally skew how many of the units are going to go in. The next thing that I think is really strong about Grey Knights in 8th edition is the fact that all their guys just have Stormbolters, and Stormbolters are pretty good in 8th, as we know. They just doubled their shooting capacity, so now they're, you know, rapid fire 2, so often you're shooting 4 shots with Stormbolters. That is pretty good. You know, so even though a Grey Knight, like a Strike Marine, is 21 points per model, they're outputting double what a Tactical Marine would be doing. So, you know, even though that their survivability is the same as a Tactical Marine, when they drop, they're outputting a lot. So I think that's definitely something that when you're playing Grey Knights, you have to kind of focus on the fact that Stormbolters are really strong, and that the best way to leverage Stormbolter use is to be up in your opponent's grill. So you're going to be wanting to make the most of your deep strikes and make the most of guys that can deep strike, such as Strike Marines, Terminators, etc. The other thing that's really strong, I think, with Grey Knights is their banner. I don't think their banner is necessarily as good as the Space Marine chapter banner, which is the kind of the Soul Burst banner, which lets you, when you die, you get on a 3-up, you get to attack again if you've got the Relic version. But the Grey Knights banner, and I'm not talking about the Relic Grey Knights banner, I think the Relic banner is good, which is like, it's a banner that gives the user a very short range smite that's D6, guaranteed D6 mortal wounds. That's pretty interesting when you combine that with a Brother Captain, but I think that just the static +1 attack aura on the Grey Knight banner is very good. The reason why I'm saying that is because if you've got what typically afflicts or a weakness of Grey Knight Strike Marines is the fact they just have 1 attack on their profile. And when you give them falchions, they go up to 2 attacks, which is pretty good. But when you can boost them to 3 attacks with the banner, you're now working with what can be considered a premium assault troop. Something charging in with 1 attack is almost a joke. But when you're charging with 3 attacks, now you're talking. Especially when you consider that every Grey Knight has got a force weapon, which means that they are power weapons, so they've got like the good Ren value, but they also do D3 wounds instead of just the single wound. So that's pretty good. Sorry, D3 damage. That's pretty good. So I think the banner's a really important kind of fulcrum or like focus for how you're playing Grey Knights. And I also think that they also have a stratagem that lets you double the range of aura effects on a particular model for the turn. So if you are dropping and you really want to have a massive kind of aura of plus extra attacks, you can just pop that stratagem, which means you don't have to trail back as much to the banner. So more guys are going to get in and more guys are going to have extra attacks. So pretty interesting. And I think that's certainly something I'm going to be looking at with my lists. The last point about Grey Knights as a strength is their Psykers. Not talking about Smite, because obviously we know that their Smite got nerfed a lot by the beta changes. But I think that when the FAQ comes out, Grey Knights might get some sort of respite, some sort of bone they might get thrown. I'm not really sure what it'll be, but notwithstanding that whole issue, I think that Grey Knight spells are pretty good, and they get, if you've got a mono Grey Knight detachment, you get +1 to cast them to deny. So there's got some very interesting psychic spells. I actually don't think there's one terrible spell on their tree. They don't have any kind of all-star amazing psychic powers like Warp Time or something like that. But powers like Gate of Infinity are pretty good. They're not as good as Warp Time, but it just gives you a lot of flexibility to be able to move around. And that's one of the things Grey Knights lack, is the maneuverability and flexibility. It gives you some of that back. And they also get pretty interesting powers like Astral Aim is pretty cool because it lets you shoot things that are out of line of sight. And what else do they have? You know, things like Hammerhand are surprisingly strong, +1 to wound on a big unit. So if you get that big unit of Terminators in with their 4 attacks each, once you include Falchions and the banner, Hammerhand starts to be really good. So now let's look at the cons of Grey Knights and why I think they are one of the worst armies currently in 8th edition. The biggest problem with Grey Knights is their cost. Everything in the whole army is super expensive. They don't have any chaff units. They don't have any fodder style units. And even the things that are kind of their early entry units like Strike Marines are still very expensive for what it essentially just is a Marine equivalent. So they die just like Tactical Marines, but they're a lot more expensive, which means that once you drop, often Grey Knights will drop down and have a really powerful, aggressive, influential turn 1. But as soon as their opponent, and even you might kill half their army with your Alpha Strike, a lot of opponents will just turn around and the rest of their army will just paste the Grey Knights, because the Grey Knights are paying so many points for their models that even a 50% of their opponent's army will be able to kill them all. So that's something that I've seen happen. And it certainly means that when you're playing Grey Knights, you're going to have to play really, you're going to have to know when not to overcommit and when not to just let all your dudes die to the return volley. Another thing that's a huge weakness of Grey Knights is that they have very weak anti-tank shooting. If you look at the Grey Knight specialist weapons, which are their Silencer, Psy Cannon, and their the Flame Incinerator, those 3 weapons, none of them are good against tanks. So the best one should be the Psy Cannon, but the Psy Cannon is not good against tanks. So as a result, you have to go to these kind of very weird and niche platforms in order to get anti-tank shooting in the army. So things like Storm Ravens with las cannons, Dreadnoughts with las cannons, Razorbacks with las cannons. That's the way to take las cannons. But as you can kind of tell, none of those options are the best platforms to take las cannons. Space Marine players, when they take anti-tank, they're taking different kind of things very often. So it means that you're taking suboptimal choices in order to leverage that anti-tank platform. Having said that, they are pretty good in combat when it comes to killing heavy type of things. So the power weapons with D3 damage are pretty good at doing it, as are the heavy hitters like the Nemesis Dread-Knight in the Grandmaster in Nemesis Dread-Knight armor, and things like Drago. Drago's a beast, so they can make up for that with their combat ability. And the last con of Grey Knights is just that they, as I said, they don't have much flexibility. They've only got like 5 or 6 or 7 unit choices, and a lot of those unit choices are just bad Space Marine units. So like Dreadnoughts and stuff, they're not particularly good. So in order to really focus and really have a powerful list, you kind of have to focus on those 2 or 3 units that Grey Knights do well. And I think that, as I said, I kind of listed them. So you've kind of got like Strike Marines that are pretty good. You know, you've got the things like the special characters that are buffing you are pretty good. That's about it. I think Storm Ravens aren't bad for Grey Knights, but they've been recently nerfed, which means they're nowhere near as efficient as they used to be. So my list is it's going to be interesting because I'm going to be trying to make the most of the weak options I have. So I am looking forward to that challenge. However, I have set myself a compromise, because when I'm setting myself this kind of challenge, I don't want to just abandon it and throw it to the wind after one tournament because I came, you know, right down the bottom with my mono Grey Knight army. So I've set myself a compromise of allowing 25% of the points in the army to be allies. So that could mean, depending on how the FAQs work out, it could be a couple of assassins, probably some Space Marine scouts, because you really want scouts to be able to prevent your opponent from stopping your deep strikes. So scouts are really important in Grey Knights. So I will allow myself 25% allies, just so that I feel like I can engage in some sort of competitive game if I do win a couple of games and I'm playing in the middle rung of the competition. I want to be able to at least give my opponent a challenge. I feel like mono Grey Knights will very often just, if your opponent's got Nurglings, for example, they'll just take the whole board with Nurglings, and you'll find yourself deep striking in your own deployment zone, which is terrible. So at least with things like scouts, with Colexus assassins, with other kind of specialist flexible units, it should allow me to offset some of the Grey Knight's worst weaknesses and be able to play some sort of competitive game. Anyway, guys, that's my 2018 season goals, and just to kind of the last summary of the video is just that I think everybody should try at times to keep things fresh. And if you are, for whatever reason, a little bit bored, a little bit jaded with 40k at the moment, just try focusing or introducing a new element of the hobby. And a lot of people I've noticed, and this is something kind of the opposite of me, some people set themselves like extremely hard and difficult painting goals, and they will never play with a unit on the table unless it's fully painted and fully finished and looks amazing. Even at an event that might be an event that doesn't have much of a paint score at all. But they'll still set themselves those rigorous, rigid goals. And I think removing that for other players could be a way for them to enjoy the hobby more. Reduce your standards a little bit in certain events and say, you know what, this one event, I'm just going to try my whatever unit you might be playing. It might be like Black Knights. I want to try using my Black Knights. They're not fully painted yet, but you know what? That'll do. This is just a game where I'm trialing them out for their competitive effectiveness. And if they don't work, maybe I'll leave them on the shelf before I finish painting them, and I'll move to something else that's a bit more competitive. So I think everybody should move things up, move things around a little bit, keep things fresh. Thanks for watching, guys. And after the FAQ, I will be posting another video about how I'm going with my Grey Knights and what my plans are for actual specific lists. So I'll catch you guys then. Cheers.